Magnus Carlsen is one of the best players of all time, becoming the youngest chess grandmaster at just 13 years old. With the highest ever chess rating of 2882 and 5 world championship titles to his name, Magnus has dominated the competition. But everything changed in 2021 when a 12-year-old Abhimanyu Mishra broke Magnus's record and became the new youngest grandmaster in history. The chess world was left speechless, and all eyes were on this mysterious chess prodigy. But what happens when the world's greatest chess player faces off against the youngest grandmaster in history? 1 year after becoming a grandmaster, Mishra would face his biggest challenger yet, world champion Magnus Carlsen. Nearly twice his opponent's age, Magnus had to win, and do so convincingly, as his entire reputation was on the line. Magnus opens with d4, and Mishra responds with d5. After c4 and c6, the game turns into the Slav defense, a solid choice by black meant to avoid any early attacks from white. Magnus continues by developing his knights to f3 and c3, while Mishra closes down the position with pawn to e6. But Magnus is not interested in a boring position and plays the provocative knight to h4, looking to exchange the knight for the bishop but giving up the pawn on c4. Mishra grabs the pawn and can confidently say that he is temporarily up a pawn against the former world champion. But Magnus saw this coming and plays e3, looking to win back the pawn on c4 while maintaining a bishop pair. Mishra plays the best move, knight d7, as trying to save the pawn would heavily weaken black's pawn structure. After white takes the pawn, black's next few moves suggest he's looking to castle queenside. But after bishop to d2 by Magnus, Mishra plays a never-before-seen move, bishop to d6, looking to cleverly reroute it to c7. Magnus spends 4 minutes thinking before playing f3 with the idea of pushing e4 in the future. A few more moves get played before both players decide to castle queenside. But it is Magnus who ends up with a better position due to having more space, a bishop pair, and better center control. Both players bring their rooks into the game and safely tuck their kings closer to the corner away from all the danger. Since Magnus has the bishop pair, he greatly benefits from opening up the position and plays the critical move pawn to e4. Unfazed by his much older opponent, Mishra plays the best move in the position, knight to d5, making use of the pin on the e-file, which doesn't allow Magnus to capture the knight, as he would lose his queen. While this would result in a crazy turn of events, Magnus sees the pin and moves his queen to f1. Meanwhile, Mishra trades a pair of knights, looking to simplify the position. Black decides to get rid of his double pawns and takes the pawn on e4, but as a result opens up more files for white to use in an attack. Pieces continue to get traded, but only white benefits from the position opening up, as Magnus's pair of bishops becomes a force to be reckoned with. Mishra, in a calm, cool, and collected fashion, plays h4, sacrificing a pawn in order to double white's pawns, as it's always fun seeing your opponent's pawns blocking each other and unable to move to the other file. However, what Mishra doesn't realize is that black's last move opened up a clear path for white to promote one of his pawns, one of the best players in the world. But in this position, Mishra makes a huge mistake and plays bishop to b6, completely ignoring white's pawn. That's now only 2 squares away from promotion. Mishra wins back the pawn, but that should be the least of his worries, as Magnus continues pushing the pawn to h7. After pawn to c5 by black, Magnus finally grabs the pawn on e3 with a brilliant tactical idea in mind. If Mishra captured the queen, Magnus would take his queen, knowing that black can't actually capture the rook, as the white pawn would promote on the next move. But with just 5 seconds on the clock, Mishra makes the biggest blunder so far with the move queen to g7. Here, Magnus knows he has completely outplayed the young prodigy and gives a check on g3, forking the king and the queen. as well as guaranteeing the promotion of his pawn. Mishra, out of options, plays rook to h8, where it immediately gets trapped by Magnus's bishop and pawn. While almost any move wins here for white, Magnus opts for the most flashy option. Rook takes d4, a brilliant sacrifice. Now, Magnus is free to trade the queens and start walking his king up the board. Interestingly, it is actually Magnus who is for the moment down in material. But with black's rook being boxed in the corner, it's only a matter of time before Magnus wins the pawn on d4 and the rest of the pawns. After Magnus grabs the pawn, it would appear that Mishra is out of trouble, as the black king can always shoulder the white king from advancing up the board. Unfortunately for Mishra, white can play a simple waiting move, pawn to h3, forcing black into a lose-lose situation where any move weakens the position, also known as zugzwang. Mishra pushes b5, but after the trade of pawns, black has no option but to allow Magnus's king to advance. You can see Magnus shaking his head, knowing that even after a handful of beers, he would easily win this position. Soon, black's last pawn falls, and Magnus goes on to create a clear path for his b-pawn to promote. And after king to a7, Abhimanyu Mishra resigns, as the pawn is only moments away from promoting. While Mishra put up a great fight, Magnus's endgame skills and his ability to convert the smallest advantage into victory ultimately proved decisive.